It is no surprise to anyone that companies nowadays try and make the most amount of money possible. And for gaming companies, that is no different. Sloppy battle pass content, questionable business changes, and certain business practices that would send a Victorian child into a coma. There is a lot to talk about. But what happens when companies utilize smart technology in order to rack in the most amount of money possible? Well, let me introduce you to the not-so-wonderful, wallet-purging world of gacha games. In gaming, while most single-player experiences are still bound to that single-time purchase through services like Steam, a lot of the current multiplayer online games have now transitioned to a different type of commercial strategy. And that commercial strategy went from taking paid games into free-to-play games with in-game purchases like premium battle passes. Many would attribute this shift in gaming to one of the biggest games ever made, that being Fortnite. At its peak during the COVID pandemic, we saw absolutely nothing like Fortnite's success, and many companies followed suit, like Apex and Overwatch, and even party games like Fall Guys in doing that same Battle Pass system. And this meant that even in the new format, after a game's release, developers were still able to rack in money. However, because a majority of these games actually held a lot of competitive integrity, most of these Battle Passes could not add anything new to the gameplay. These Battle Passes were always filled with cosmetic equipment that only changed the visual flair and the overall visuals of a game, but not its gameplay. This is because game developers did not want a pay-to-win system in their games, because most of these games actually have a competitive scene behind them. Otherwise, we would have rich people taking advantage of poor people, and we already have enough of that.
I hate rich people!
But what if, stick with me here, you made a game where the Battle Pass did affect the gameplay and how much you can do in a game? Welcome to Gacha. But what does the word gacha actually mean? It actually comes from the Japanese word known as gachapon, where gacha refers to the sound made by the hand cranking of a vending machine, and pon, the sound made by the capsule when it lands on the collection tray. These games, while not exclusive to but primarily residing in mobile devices, involve the players spending their hard-earned cash and dollary dues in order to earn virtual items, assets, and everything in between through a loot box-like system known as gacha pulls. These items, unlike the ones commonly seen in multiplayer games, do in fact change gameplay, and they incite the player to spend money to unlock things in the game they did not previously have. But surely no one would be drawn to a game where spending money is the main feature, right? Right? But that's besides the point. Let me introduce you to one of the biggest gacha games out there right now and why their business model works. As mentioned before, games that are free to play but have in-app purchases are extremely commonplace nowadays. And that is also the case for the world-renowned gacha game known as Genshin Impact. Genshin Impact is a game that you would get if you thrusted a gacha system upon an open-world, narrative-driven story game. Flip them around, still makes sense. Who gives a f***? Not me. What seemingly started as a Zelda Breath of the Wild clone has developed extensively past these original accusations. This game has a carefully woven storyline that follows the player as they travel through the game's many regions, meeting characters that the player themselves can roll for in the gacha system. But here's the catch. Unless the players are one of Saudi Arabia's many princes or are willing to invest their kids' college fund fully into the game, they will never be able to attain every single character available. Not only do most characters only appear for a limited time, most gacha players are familiar with a name so scary, so dubious, that you would imagine it's the second coming of Voldemort. And that word is the 50-50. In these games, every single time you roll, you get slowly and slowly closer to the big boy reward, the 5-star characters or weapons. And these 5 stars can be both standard and limited. Limited being, of course, appearing only for a limited time, and the standards always being available within the banners in the game.
Oh my god!
You inevitably get a 5-star after a total of 90 pulls. Pulls being the equivalent of a hand crank on a gambling machine. However, if your last 5-star was a limited time character or weapon, then you have officially entered 50-50. This means that the next time you pull a 5-star character, you will have a 50% chance of getting that limited character or weapon, or a 50% chance of getting a standard character that is always there. And it's here, right here, where the big bucks wreck in. You can only imagine grinding for so many months, doing so many quests and talking to so many different characters to get those 90 pulls, only for you to end up with a standard Joe. And so your journey to 90 pulls is reset and you must begin again. While playing through the game does net you a lot of materials to allow you to pull within the gacha system, it does not give you even nearly remotely enough to get every single limited character. And here's where our friendly little shop comes into play, where people will spend their hard-earned money to get currency in order to unlock those beautiful 5-star characters. And then boom, you get this! It is in fact so much money that the company behind the game, Hoyoverse, actually invested a total of $65 million into nuclear fission technology like it was nothing. So what does Hoyoverse actually do within Genshin Impact that makes them stand out amidst the sea of gacha games? Well, that can actually be broken down into 3. Point number 1, the game is accessible. You can play Genshin Impact on your PC, on a console, or even on your mobile phone. And considering the average consumer does not have a PC that is up to standard to play a game like this, it gives them an edge over their competitors by allowing a whole new market right at their fingertips. And people are now able, with mobile phones, to roll for their perfect waifus and husbandos from literally anywhere. Furthermore, while Genshin is technically a single-player game, there is co-op involved with the game where people can join each other's world and just participate in events together and have a lot of fun. And even though Genshin is technically a co-op game, let me tell you, there is no PvP, and people still manage to talk smack to each other about what the best builds are in the game. And the third point is that Genshin's team makes sure to constantly update the game with new characters, new weapons, new events,
6 stars sold!
new everything to keep players coming back and with a sense of freshness to their game. Many of these events are actually limited time, dragging players back to play alone or even with friends. Look, they even put The Weeknd and Tupac into the game. The ethics behind gacha, however, are still a very hot and debated topic online about how these games are wired and made to short-circuit your sense of self-control. And as mentioned before, one of the ways they do this is through limited time events and through FOMO, fear of missing out. And in contrast to a lot of multiplayer games that do have a win or a loss, so a positive or negative experience, gacha games don't have that. They only have a positive reward loop that keeps players
coming back,
keeps players happy, and eventually gets them to spend money in this game. And even beyond that, these games even have daily login rewards to keep you coming every single day and getting things in, slowly developing a addictive cycle. And this even extends to the game's visuals, where rolling a 5-star character gets you this amazing and beautiful animation that spikes your serotonin and dopamine levels to the absolute skies. And on top of these shiny animations and systems in place that keeps players from leaving, the character designs have a lot of thought put behind them to have the most appeal possible so players eventually spend their money. These games are made by professional game developers alongside professional psychologists that aim to keep you attached to this game for as long as physically possible. So if you do play responsible, don't gacha, and don't chase after the 50-50. But be careful not to spend your hard-earned money on big personalities, in-game physics, or even very, very meticulously chosen voice acting choices.
Oh, have something to say?
But that's all from me today. Please be careful not to shackle your wallet or your soul to these games. And as always, remain hard stuck.